Sarah Martinez never imagined that a single morning would change everything she thought she knew about fairness, respect, and the power of appearances. What started as a routine job interview would become a lesson that an entire company would never forget. Sarah lived in a cozy apartment on Oak Avenue, the kind of neighborhood where people knew each other's names and borrowed sugar without hesitation. At 32, she had the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Her days followed a comfortable rhythm: morning yoga in her small living room, coffee at the corner café where Maria always remembered her order, and long walks through the nearby park where she did her best thinking. Her husband David worked in what he simply called consulting. When pressed for details, he would smile and say he helped companies solve problems, then change the subject to ask about her day. Sarah respected his privacy about work. After all, when he was home, he was completely present with her. They had been married for 6 years, and David still left little notes in her coffee mug and brought her wildflowers from the farmer's market every Saturday morning. Money was never discussed in their household, though Sarah noticed they never seemed to worry about bills. David would simply say they were comfortable and encourage her to pursue whatever made her happy. Sarah had spent the last few years volunteering at the local literacy center, teaching adults to read. The work was fulfilling but unpaid, and lately she had been thinking about returning to the corporate world to contribute financially to their household. Sarah dressed practically and simply. Her wardrobe consisted of comfortable pieces that served multiple purposes: cardigans that worked for both volunteer shifts and coffee dates, jeans that were well-made but not expensive, and shoes chosen for comfort rather than fashion. She shopped at discount retailers and felt no shame about it. Quality mattered more than labels, and she had learned to find well-made pieces regardless of their price point. Her friends sometimes commented on her minimalist approach to fashion, but Sarah genuinely preferred simplicity. A good blazer, well-fitted pants, and comfortable flats were all she needed to feel confident in any situation. She had never been drawn to flashy accessories or designer handbags. Her grandmother's simple gold wedding band and a pair of pearl earrings David had given her for their anniversary were the only jewelry she wore regularly. The catalyst came on a Tuesday morning when Sarah saw an advertisement for a marketing coordinator position at Pinnacle Corporate Solutions. The job description matched her background perfectly. She had a degree in communications and several years of experience before she had stepped away to volunteer. The company was described as innovative and forward-thinking, exactly the kind of place where she could make a meaningful contribution. Sarah spent days preparing her application. She researched the company thoroughly, customized her resume to highlight relevant experience, and wrote a cover letter that genuinely reflected her enthusiasm for the role. When they called to schedule an interview, Sarah felt a flutter of excitement she hadn't experienced in years. This felt like the right opportunity at the right time. The night before the interview, Sarah laid out her outfit carefully. She chose her best black pants, a crisp white blouse, and a navy blazer she had purchased on sale 2 years earlier. The ensemble was professional and appropriate, though admittedly not expensive. She polished her simple black flats and organized her portfolio in a leather folder that had seen better days, but was still functional and neat. David wished her luck that morning with his usual warmth and confidence. "Just be yourself," he said, kissing her forehead. "Any company would be lucky to have you." Sarah felt ready. She had prepared thoroughly, dressed appropriately, and genuinely wanted the position. What could go wrong? Pinnacle Corporate Solutions occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. The lobby was all marble and chrome, with modern art that probably cost more than most people's cars. Sarah felt a moment of intimidation as she stepped off the elevator onto the 15th floor, but she reminded herself that she belonged here just as much as anyone else. The reception area was decorated in whites and grays, with furniture that looked like it had come straight from an expensive design magazine. Fresh orchids sat on every surface, and the air smelled faintly of expensive perfume. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a designer dress, looked up from her computer screen with the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I'm Sarah Martinez," Sarah said warmly. "I have an 11 o'clock interview for the marketing coordinator position. The receptionist's gaze swept over Sarah's outfit quickly before she nodded and made a note on her computer. "Please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Sarah settled into one of the pristine white chairs and observed her surroundings. Other people waiting in the reception area were dressed expensively. Women in designer suits with handbags that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly grocery budget. Men in tailored shirts with watches that caught the light when they moved. Sarah felt a flicker of self-consciousness but pushed it aside. She was here based on her qualifications, not her wardrobe. 20 minutes passed before a woman emerged from the inner offices. "Sarah Martinez," she called, and Sarah stood, smoothing her blazer and gathering her portfolio. The woman was tall and impeccably dressed in what was clearly a very expensive suit. Her hair was styled in a perfect bob, and her makeup looked professionally applied. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, Human Resources Director. Please follow me." Jennifer's handshake was brief and perfunctory, and she didn't make eye contact for more than a second. As they walked through the office, Sarah noticed how different the atmosphere felt from the volunteer center where she spent her time. Here, everything was quiet efficiency and muted conversations. Employees sat at spotless desks, many wearing headphones, focused intently on their computer screens. The conference room where the interview would take place was intimidating in its sterility. A long glass table dominated the space, surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, and Sarah tried to use the beautiful vista to calm her growing nervousness. "The hiring committee will be joining us momentarily," Jennifer said, not offering Sarah water or coffee as she had clearly seen her do for other candidates while they waited in reception. Instead, Jennifer busied herself with her phone, occasionally glancing at Sarah with an expression that seemed to grow more skeptical by the minute. When the other interviewers arrived, Sarah understood immediately that this was going to be more challenging than she had anticipated. There was Marcus Thompson, the department head, a man in his 50s whose expensive suit and gold cufflinks suggested he was accustomed to luxury. Next came Amanda Rivers, a woman about Sarah's age but dressed in what was clearly a designer outfit, complete with shoes that probably cost more than Sarah's entire interview ensemble. The introductions were polite but cool. Sarah noticed that none of them really looked at her when they shook hands, their gazes instead focusing on her simple clothing and inexpensive accessories. Marcus settled into his chair with the air of someone who had already made up his mind, while Amanda whispered something to Jennifer that made both women glance at Sarah and suppress what looked like smirks. "So Sarah," Marcus began, not bothering to look at her resume, "tell us why you think you'd be a good fit for Pinnacle Corporate Solutions." His tone suggested he was going through the motions rather than genuinely interested in her answer. Sarah launched into the response she had prepared, highlighting her education, experience, and passion for marketing communications. As she spoke, she could see the interviewers exchanging glances. Amanda was openly checking her phone, while Jennifer made notes that seemed to have nothing to do with what Sarah was saying. Marcus interrupted her mid-sentence. "That's interesting. And where did you get that blazer?" "It's very practical." The question caught Sarah off guard. "I'm sorry," she asked, not sure she had heard correctly. Amanda leaned forward with a smile that wasn't friendly. "Your outfit. It's quite different from what we usually see here. Very budget-conscious." The way she said budget-conscious made it sound like an infectious disease. Sarah felt her cheeks flush but maintained her composure. "I believe in dressing appropriately for the situation while staying within my means. I think professional competence matters more than expensive clothing." Jennifer actually laughed at this response. "Well, that's certainly one perspective," she said, making another note on her pad. The questions that followed had little to do with Sarah's qualifications and everything to do with undermining her confidence. Marcus asked about her employment gap, making her volunteer work sound like she had been sitting idle for years. Amanda questioned whether someone with her background could understand the sophisticated needs of their high-end clients. Jennifer wondered aloud if Sarah had done her research about the company culture and whether she truly understood what kind of environment Pinnacle Corporate Solutions was. "You see," Amanda explained with condescending patience, "our clients expect a certain level of sophistication from our team members. They're used to working with people who understand their world, who can relate to their expectations and lifestyle." She gestured around the expensive conference room as if it were evidence in a court case. This isn't the kind of place where someone can just fake it until they make it. Sarah felt the familiar sting of being judged not for her abilities but for her appearance and perceived social class. "I believe my work speaks for itself," she said quietly. "My previous employers valued my creativity, dedication, and results. I'm confident I could bring the same level of excellence to this position." Marcus chuckled, and the sound was not kind. "Excellence is relative, Sarah. What passes for excellence in some environments might not meet our standards here." He leaned back in his expensive chair with the air of someone delivering a verdict. "Our clients pay premium prices for premium service. They expect to work with people who understand quality, who live quality in their daily lives. People like us," Amanda added with false sweetness, "can usually tell when someone doesn't quite fit the Pinnacle culture. It's nothing personal, just a matter of alignment." The word alignment hung in the air like an accusation. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Sarah understood perfectly what they meant. She didn't look wealthy enough to work there. Jennifer closed her portfolio with a sharp snap. "Well, I think we've learned what we need to know today. Sarah, thank you for coming in. We'll be making our decision very quickly, so you should hear from us soon." Her tone made it clear that Sarah shouldn't hold her breath waiting for good news. As Sarah gathered her things, she heard Amanda whisper to Marcus, "I can't believe she thought she had a chance here. Did you see those shoes?" They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. Sarah was just another amusing story they would share later about the woman who didn't know her place. The walk to the elevator felt endless. Sarah could feel eyes on her as she passed through the office, and she was certain that word of the entertaining interview had already begun to spread. The receptionist didn't look up when Sarah passed her desk, and Sarah wondered if even she had been part of the setup, evaluating and dismissing Sarah from the moment she walked in. Sarah sat in her car in the parking garage for 15 minutes before she could trust herself to drive. Her hands were shaking, and she felt a combination of anger and humiliation that she had never experienced before. She had been professionally qualified for the position, had prepared thoroughly, and had conducted herself with dignity throughout the interview. None of that had mattered because she didn't look like she belonged in their expensive world. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and self-doubt. Sarah found herself questioning everything: her clothes, her choices, even her worth as a professional. By the time she pulled into a parking space, she felt completely deflated. She had been judged, found wanting, and dismissed not for her abilities but for her appearance and perceived economic status. David was working from home that day, which was unusual but not unheard of. Sarah found him in his small office, typing on his laptop with the kind of focused intensity she had seen before but never really questioned. When he looked up and saw her face, he immediately closed the laptop and gave her his complete attention. "How did it go?" he asked, but her expression had already given him the answer. Sarah collapsed into the chair across from his desk and told him everything. Every condescending comment, every dismissive look, every moment of humiliation she had endured. As she spoke, she watched David's expression change from concern to something she had never seen before, a cold, controlled anger that seemed to fill the small room. When Sarah finished her story, David was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice she didn't recognize, he asked, "What were their names?" Sarah was surprised by the intensity of his question. "David, it's okay. I don't want to cause trouble. Maybe they were right. Maybe I don't fit in that kind of environment." "Sarah," David said, and something in his tone stopped her self-doubt immediately. "What were their names?" So Sarah told him. Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Thompson, Amanda Rivers, and Pinnacle Corporate Solutions. She described each of them in detail, repeated their exact words, and explained how they had made her feel like she was beneath their consideration. David listened to every word with a kind of attention that made Sarah feel like he was memorizing each detail. When she finished, he was quiet again, but she could see his mind working. "I need you to trust me on something," he said finally. "This isn't about revenge or causing problems. This is about people learning that every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. No one should ever make you feel the way they made you feel today." There was something in David's voice that Sarah had never heard before. Authority, power, decision. It was like seeing a completely different person wearing her husband's face. For the first time, she wondered if there was more to David's work than he had ever told her. But she trusted him completely, so when he asked her to trust him on this, she nodded and said she would. That evening, after Sarah had gone to bed early, emotionally exhausted from the day's events, David made a series of phone calls. His first call was to his head of corporate acquisitions. His second was to his legal team. His third was to the financial analysts who kept track of companies that might be interesting investment opportunities or acquisition targets. By midnight, David had a complete picture of Pinnacle Corporate Solutions, their revenue streams, their client base, their debt structure, and most importantly, their vulnerabilities. What he discovered was very interesting indeed. Pinnacle Corporate Solutions was not the thriving company they pretended to be. They were hemorrhaging money, losing clients to more innovative competitors, and desperately in need of either a major capital injection or a complete restructuring. The company was owned by a man named Robert Chen, no relation to David despite the shared surname. Robert had inherited the business from his father, but lacked the vision and leadership skills necessary to adapt to changing market conditions. For the past 18 months, he had been quietly looking for investors or buyers, but the company's reputation for arrogance and poor employee relations had made them a less attractive target than they could have been. David's next call was to Robert Chen himself. It was nearly 2 a.m, but when you have the kind of influence David wielded, people took your calls regardless of the hour. "Mr. Chen," David said calmly, "I'm David Rodriguez, CEO of Rodriguez Global Enterprises. I'm interested in discussing a business opportunity with you. I'd like to acquire your company, all of it. The contracts, the client relationships, the building lease, everything." Robert, probably thinking he was still dreaming, asked about the timeline and price range David had in mind. "I'm prepared to offer you 40% above your current valuation," David said without emotion. "Complete cash transaction, closed within 48 hours. But I have one specific condition. I want to personally oversee the transition period, starting with a comprehensive review of your human resources policies and management practices." By dawn, the legal paperwork was being drafted. By noon, the contracts were signed. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, David Rodriguez owned every aspect of Pinnacle Corporate Solutions: their client contracts, their office lease, their equipment, and most importantly, their employment practices. The total investment was just under $50 million, paid in full by electronic transfer before the business day ended. But the acquisition was just the beginning of David's plan. He spent the remainder of the day reviewing employee files, examining the company's hiring practices, and most importantly, watching the security footage from Sarah's interview the day before. What he saw confirmed everything Sarah had told him and made him even more determined to ensure that no other person would ever be treated the way his wife had been treated. David also looked into the backgrounds of every manager and employee at Pinnacle Corporate Solutions. What he found was that most of the staff were hardworking people just trying to build careers and support their families. There was one junior marketing associate, Lisa Chen, who, according to the security footage, had looked visibly uncomfortable during Sarah's interview. She had actually started to say something several times, but had been silenced by looks from the senior staff. David made a note of Lisa's behavior. Good people deserve to be recognized and rewarded, just as poor behavior deserved consequences. He also discovered that Sarah's treatment was not an isolated incident. Employee complaints and exit interviews revealed a pattern of discrimination and elitist behavior, particularly from the management team of Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Thompson, and Amanda Rivers. Several former employees had left the company citing hostile work environment and discriminatory practices, though none had pursued legal action. The pattern was clear. Pinnacle Corporate Solutions had created a culture where people were judged not on their abilities, but on their appearance, connections, and perceived social status. By evening, David had developed a comprehensive plan for the next day. He knew exactly how it would unfold, and he knew that Jennifer, Marcus, and Amanda were about to learn a lesson about respect, dignity, and the consequences of judging people based on appearances. More importantly, he was going to make sure that Pinnacle Corporate Solutions became the kind of company where Sarah would want to work, where everyone would be treated with the respect they deserved. As David prepared for bed that night, he looked in on Sarah, who was sleeping fitfully after the emotional trauma of her interview. Tomorrow would bring justice, not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel less than worthy because of how they looked or where they came from. Sometimes justice moves slowly. But sometimes, when you have the right resources and the right motivation, justice can move very quickly indeed. The next morning, David asked Sarah to wear the exact same outfit she had worn to the interview. "Trust me on this," he said gently, adjusting her blazer collar. "I want you to go back to Pinnacle Corporate Solutions at exactly 10:30. I'll meet you there, but I need you to go in first." Sarah felt nervous returning to the scene of yesterday's humiliation, but something in David's calm confidence reassured her. She walked through the gleaming lobby with her head held high, though her heart was racing. The same receptionist glanced up with immediate recognition and barely concealed irritation. Jennifer Walsh appeared almost instantly, as if she had been watching for Sarah's return. "You're back," she said, not bothering to hide her annoyance. "I thought we made our position quite clear yesterday. The role has been filled by someone more suitable for our company culture." Marcus Thompson emerged from his office, clearly having been alerted to Sarah's presence. "Ms. Martinez, I'm going to have to ask you not to waste our time today. We have important business to conduct with qualified candidates." Sarah smiled calmly. "Actually, I think you'll want to hear what I have to say today." That's when the elevator doors opened, and David stepped into the reception area. He was dressed in a simple gray suit, nothing flashy or obviously expensive, carrying a leather briefcase that looked well used rather than new. To Jennifer and Marcus, he probably appeared to be just another ordinary person who didn't belong in their exclusive environment. "Is that your husband?" Jennifer asked with a smirk. "The one who supposedly supports your career ambitions?" "Yes," Sarah said, watching David approach with quiet confidence. "That's my husband, David Rodriguez." Marcus chuckled. "Well, let's see what he thinks about the caliber of positions at Pinnacle Corporate Solutions." David walked directly to where they were standing, his expression calm, but carrying an authority that made the air in the room feel different. "Good morning," he said pleasantly to Jennifer and Marcus. "I'm David Rodriguez, and I believe we need to have a conversation." Jennifer looked confused at first, then something flickered in her eyes. Marcus still appeared dismissive, but there was a hint of uncertainty creeping into his expression. David opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder of official documents. "As of yesterday afternoon, I became the owner of Pinnacle Corporate Solutions. The building lease, the client contracts, the business operations, all of it." He handed the ownership papers to Marcus, whose face went completely white. "You're welcome to verify this with your former boss, Robert Chen. I'm sure he'll confirm that Rodriguez Global Enterprises now controls every aspect of this company." Jennifer took a step backward, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Marcus stared at the documents as if they were written in a foreign language. "I'm sorry, what?" he stammered. "I purchased this company," David repeated calmly, "approximately 36 hours after my wife was humiliated, disrespected, and discriminated against by your management team." Amanda Rivers had appeared during the commotion, drawn by the unusual activity in the reception area. She took one look at the documents in Marcus's trembling hands and immediately understood that something catastrophic was happening to her carefully constructed world. "Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding," Marcus tried desperately. "We were just following standard company protocols yesterday." "Standard protocols?" David's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. "Standard protocols include dismissing qualified candidates based on their clothing, making judgments about someone's worth based on where they shop for professional attire." Jennifer found her voice first. "Mr. Rodriguez, sir, we can explain. We deal with high-end clients who have certain expectations about the team members they work with." "Expectations like what?" David asked. "That employees must wear designer clothing to be competent? That someone's value is determined by the cost of their accessories rather than their qualifications and character?" The beauty of the moment was in its quiet power. No shouting, no dramatic gestures, just the simple reality of consequences meeting actions. David's next words carried the weight of absolute authority. "Jennifer Walsh, Marcus Thompson, Amanda Rivers, your employment here is terminated immediately. You'll receive your final compensation according to labor laws, but your access to this facility ends now." The security guard, the same one who had watched Sarah with suspicion the day before, stepped forward to escort them out. The transformation in the office was immediate and visible. Other employees, sensing the shift in power, began paying attention to how they treated everyone around them. David then called out to Lisa Chen, the junior marketing associate who had shown discomfort during Sarah's interview. "Could you join us, please?" Lisa approached nervously, clearly expecting to be fired as well. Instead, David smiled warmly. "I reviewed yesterday's security footage. I saw that you wanted to speak up when my wife was being mistreated. That tells me you understand what professional respect actually means. Congratulations, you're the new Human Resources Director." But David's changes went far beyond personnel decisions. He immediately implemented new policies ensuring that every candidate, regardless of appearance or background, would receive equal consideration and respectful treatment. No more assumptions based on clothing, no more credit checks based on perceived economic status, no more discrimination disguised as, quote, cultural fit. As they prepared to leave, David put his arm around Sarah. "I didn't do this for revenge," he said quietly. "I did this because every person deserves to be treated with dignity. What happened to you should never happen to anyone." Sarah looked around the transformed office, where employees were already treating each other with noticeably more respect and consideration. The lesson was clear. Kindness costs nothing, but the absence of it can cost everything. 3 months later, Sarah accepted the position of marketing director at the newly restructured Pinnacle Corporate Solutions, now a company that valued talent over appearances and character over clothing labels. Under her leadership, the marketing department flourished, attracting clients who appreciated authenticity over artifice. The story spread through professional networks as a reminder that you never truly know someone's full story, their connections, or their capabilities. Jennifer, Marcus, and Amanda learned this lesson the hard way, but it didn't have to come to that. Respect and dignity should be given freely, not earned through expensive displays of wealth. Sometimes justice moves slowly, but sometimes it arrives exactly when it's needed most. The real victory wasn't in the firing of 3 discriminatory managers, but in the creation of a workplace where everyone could succeed based on their merit rather than their wardrobe. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.